Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome from Rwanda. My name is Ganza More Robert, and I'm the Conservation Agriculture Lead at ShareScreen Africa. I am joined here by my colleague, Diane Mumarungu, who is a coordinator at ShareScreen Africa as well. And together, we're very excited to be your hosts this evening. Now, a huge welcome to Cultivate Africa. This has been your virtual talk series designed to create a vibrant Pan-African community for everyone passionate about agriculture. Our mission is very simple. We want to bring together farmers, agronomists, researchers, students, lecturers to share their knowledge, discuss pressing challenges, and explore the innovative opportunities shaping our continent's soil-friendly farming. And now to kick off tonight, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome my former professor, Dr. Angelique Kangondo, who is an agriculture economist with extensive training and experience. In her role at the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, she teaches agriculture economics and agribusiness while actively contributing to research and extension programs. Conservation agriculture is often promoted as a pathway to sustainable farming, but is it truly profitable? In this session, we will explore the economics behind conservation agriculture, examining how healthy soils, reducing input costs, and better resource management can translate into long-term financial gains for farmers. Now, please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Angelique Kangondo. Dr. Welcome. We are happy to have you tonight.
Thank you so much, Robert. Good evening, everyone.
I must start asking you how your day was because I know you've been grading my young brothers and sisters projects. I must start asking how that was, and maybe if there are some of the in pricing projects, you can touch on that as well. How was it?
Thanks. My day was well. In fact, what I've been doing today and yesterday aligns with our today's conversation, where we have our students coming back from their internship where they have been hosted from different organizations. But their capstone projects were mostly around conservation agriculture. You know, we are focusing on conservation agriculture here. So yes, they have been developing projects that can support the host as well as farmers in adoption of conservation agriculture as well as improving their well-being. So in fact, it was really well.
That's nice to hear. I really hope some of those projects are going to materialize in the outside world and maybe solve some of the issues we are facing right now. And to take advantage of time, I must start with a very simple question. We're going to talk about the profitability of sustainable farming, and one would start asking himself or herself, is really sustainable agriculture good for the environment? One would argue it's being advertised just to protect the environment, but does it have an eco-economic outcome? Does it translate to the economic outcomes, or it's just about the environmental sustainability?
Thanks, Robert. That's a very good and interesting question. So for me, I will not separate the two because conservation agriculture is environmental, but when it comes to farmers, it becomes more meaningful because it protects their income. So I will use an example of Rwanda, whereby around 70% of agricultural households operate below a half of hectare. And with that land being very small like that, losing soil fertility is not an abstract environmental issue, but it directly reduces the household productive base. That means conservation agriculture, it's an economic decision as much as it's an environmental decision, because it can reduce repeated land preparation and other input associated, but also it protects the moisture. It protects the soil it protects the soil erosion. It improves fertilizer efficiency, and it makes yield more stable. So it's an economic decision as much as it is environmental one.
Mhm. That's very insightful. Maybe you talked about having a healthy soil, fertilizer application and all. One would also ask themselves, uh, before even talking about profits, how should we define profitability in agriculture? Is it simply earning more money at harvest, or should we be looking at um, beyond yield to cost efficiency and maybe net returns?
Okay, thanks. Um, how could we define profitability? Profitability, in my opinion, can be looked at, can be defined by net return instead of yield only. Why am I saying this? You may have a higher yield that is still it's unprofitable. Why? Because it requires high cost of inputs, such as labor, fertilizer, fuel, irrigation, post-harvest handling, and other related costs. So as economists, I would look at gross margin, I look at tools like best benefit cost ratio, I will look at labor productivity, I will look at risks associated with that, and I will look at long-term value of maintaining soil health. So let me use an example of the economic report we have here at RICA. And this would be based on our cropping season, 2024 cropping season A, where we produced maize. So the gross margin for per hectare was around 900,000 per hectare. And we had a benefit cost ratio of 1.85 Rwandan francs. That means for every one every Rwandan franc that is invested, it generates 1.85 Rwandan francs for revenue. Already, you can understand that CA is profitable. So the profitability in CA can be also looked as while considering the avoided losses. If soil erosion, for example, if drought stress, if poor fertilizer efficiency reduces future production, then a CA practice or good agricultural practice that protects soil may have economic value even when the first season profit is not dramatic.
Mm. Yeah, I think we love numbers. Lots of academicians love numbers, and I would say even many of our audience love numbers. Think about one Rwandan franc of investment yielding 1.8 of returns. I think this is a good testament of how profitability CA can be. But you also talked about we should also be looking at the long-term healthy of the farm. If we want to look at profitability, you should also take into consideration the long-term healthy of the farm. And maybe my next question would be, we know CA has principles. There are mainly three principles of CA, thinking about minimum soil disturbance, crop diversification, and um, um, min minimum soil disturbance, permanent soil cover, and crop diversification. And my question would be, amongst all those three, what would you say is uh, delivers greater economic returns compared to others, or does it have to work does it have to go alongside each other, or there's one that delivers much of the returns than others?
That's a very good question because it comes often where sometimes farmers feel like, well, for adopting CA, I can just have one practice. In fact, the great value comes when all the three practices are combined. But in a situation where I'm asked to choose one, I personally will go with permanent soil cover. Why? Let me use again Rwandan situation. In Rwandan hilly farming system, soil is exposed and can be easily damaged by rainfall. So if you practice soil cover, it will reduce the runoff. It will keep soil moisture and it will also suppress some weed and gradually it will improve yield. But also other practices have their own benefit. For example, the minimum soil disturbances will help to reduce repeated land preparation cost. It will also protect soil moisture. Again, the crop diversification also reduces risk. For example, if a farmer grow different crops, let's name like maize, and if it happens that maize performs poorly, then legumes or any other crop may support the household in food, maybe income generation. So, also, if I refer to some studies there's a study that evaluated the different conservation practices in sub-Saharan Africa, where they found that no-till alone is not enough because if you practice reduced till without much mulching, without crop rotation, it can depress yield. Okay. But in a situation where you combine soil cover and rotation, it performs better. So the results were better when the more than one practices are combined. So to be brief, the value is in package, not in one or not in a single practice.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think it makes lots of sense because if you want to look at the sustainability part as well, if you want to embark on conservation agriculture, you shouldn't look at one practice and forego another.
It-
It's very fortunate that even in the economic side of it, you have to combine both. I mean, all of the principles. And while answering your question, the previous question, you talked about how permanent soil cover and minimum soil disturbance reduce the repeated land preparation costs. And my next question would be um, for let's say there's a farmer amongst our audience and he or she wants to start practicing conservation agriculture. What would you say are maybe the biggest upfront cost or investment farmers should expect when they are transitioning to conservation agriculture?
Yeah, I believe most of the time when you talk about the upfront costs, we may expect financial costs, but most of the time, or it is not necessary that the upfront cost should only be financial, because yes, farmers need a starting point. They may need, for example, the cover crop seeds. They may need better planting tools, like the implements, CA implements. They may need training. They may need extra labor for maybe land preparation or weeding. They may need residues and all others management related, CA management related. So in some cases, farmers may initially spend more on seeds, especially the cover crop seeds, because they are not available everywhere. They may spend much on fertilizer, on irrigation, weeding, land preparation, but land preparation over time or during transition period, its cost fall. So in Rwanda, again, using it as a case study, there is an opportunity cost usually rise around residues, crop residues. Why? Because residues may be needed for livestock feed as livestock feeds. They may be used as bedding. So farmer cannot always leave all the residues on the farm. They have to take some that can be used for other purposes. That's why CA recommendation need to be very realistic based on context. So even partial residue retention, when it's combined with legumes or agroforestry and better soil cover may be a practical starting point for a farmer who wants to adopt CA for the first time.
I I love the answer, and I love the fact that you touched on most of the inputs you need to have before starting not even conservation agriculture, any sustainable agriculture endeavor you want to embark on. I think you touched on most of the inputs you would need. Um, but amongst the inputs, there's always a bigger fish, and currently there's a big issue amongst farmers and different agriculture sectors because of a hit different economies has to experience with what's going on, the closure of Strait of Hormuz. Um,
Mm,
the fertilizer prices have gone very high.
mm,
And my question is, can conservation agriculture realistically reduce farmers' dependence on external, which is very expensive,
mhm.
input? Can conservation agriculture realistically help in not depending on that?
Um, hmm. That's a kind of tricky question again, which I would phrase carefully. Conservation agriculture does not mean that farmers will stop using fertilizer, especially in Rwanda, where we have many soil that are nutrient depleted. What CL does is to improve the efficiency of the fertilizer that farmers apply because better soil, organic matter, better moisture retention, and strong root systems can reduce the amount of nutrient loss through runoff and poor timing.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think we usually mistaken conservation agriculture and think it's going to solve all the problems, all the soil problems. Um, I don't think any farmer can come and confidently say he has stopped using any kind of fertilizer and any kind of chemical fertilizer. But I
Mhm.
also believe it's one way to reducing the level of chemical fertilizer one uses. So my next question, and for the audience, please start thinking about your questions, and we're soon going to open up for you and start asking your questions. My next question is what role should the government policies, uh, cooperatives, and agriculture extension services play in making conservation agriculture more profitable and accessible for smallholder farmers?
Yes, so yes, we must acknowledge the fact that farmers alone cannot solve all the constraints. It must be the intervention from the government and other stakeholders to support the initiatives. Already, there are initiatives that are already in place. But to be specific, I believe if I start with the government, there is a need to support CA through continuous extension program. There's need to have demonstration plots in the district where farmers can easily visit those demo plots. There is a need to invest in erosion control programs. Also, if there is any other way or any possible ways that the government can improve the access to suitable mechanism and incentives that can reduce or can help the transition costs for farmers. Um, I will use the example from the Agricultural Household Survey by the National Institute of Statistics in 2024. You can read the report, where they reported that 90% of agricultural households protect land against erosion, and while 67% already planted agroforestry. I believe those are used for entry point for CA and the programs that the government has already put in place. So for cooperatives, um, um, yes, they say if you want to go far, do it. I think you can complete the sentence. So
Yeah, go with
for
someone.
cooperatives, yeah, they can reduce cost by doing the input purchase, maybe equipment sharing, or all the collective activities, including collective marketing. Why? This is important for cooperative members because if you look at, for example, the mechanical equipment to be purchased, it makes a sense to be used by many farmers or a cooperative than being owned and used by one individual farmer. Okay. So for extension, I would say specifically, the extension should focus on continuous coaching, not one-off message, because farmers need continuous support, continuous coaching, mentoring, follow-up, and farmers need support on crop choice, for example. They need support on residue management continuously. They have to be corrected, mentored every now and then. They need to be coached and supported on planting dates when to plant because they always wait for the neighbor to plant. I can also plant, but is it really what it should be done? They need support on weed control, fertilizer timing, and market decision. In fact, while we are talking about fertilizer timing, I saw our students, most of the projects are on the fertilizer timing because they noticed that it's a big issue among farmers where they just apply fertilizer anytime if they feel like doing it. So most of them are helping the farmers and the host institution to know the exact time to apply fertilizer for each crop and each season.
Yeah, yeah. I think from what you just said, lots of sense, but to me what stood out was the extension demo plots in every district if possible, because I've went back to Rika, and one of the interesting part of what's there, which was not there when I was a student, are the demo plots. You
Mhm.
can you can lecture me, you can lecture farmers, you can talk to them about the benefits of conservation agriculture and sustainable farming. But as long as they don't see what's happening in real time,
Mhm.
I think the adoption will be a problem. And this brings me to my next question. We've talked about how conservation agriculture brings profit. We've talked about why should farmers adopt it, but why do you think the adoption remains a challenge since conservation agriculture offer clear economic benefits? Why do you think adoption remains relatively low among farmers?
Well, there could be several reasons to that. One being, yes, the adoption is low because the benefits are gradual, but the costs are immediate. So if a farmer who is short of cash or food has to adopt CA, remember the transition period may take time. According to the literature, may get or observe the profit between 3 to 4 years. So this farmer we are talking about cannot always wait for several seasons to observe soil improvement or to have profit. So residues may be needed for livestock, as I mentioned earlier, because there's this competition or opportunity costs around residues when it has to be used for livestock feed or can be used for as residue. So labor may be limited. That's an example. Land may be fragmented, just like in our country, and some farmers may not have access to the right equipment, may not have access on advice or right advice, even on timely advice. The second point is there's also risk. So if a farmer adopts CA and there's no good technical support, and if the crop performs poorly, you know who bears the loss? The farmer, not the extensionist, not the government. So this is why the evidence must be local and context specific. Another reason could be CA requires a correct implementation. Okay.
Mhm.
So if I use the previous research from Sub-Saharan Africa that shows that CA, it's a package. It's not one practice. That means the low adoption is not simply because farmers are resistant. It is often because they are responding rationally to risks that comes with, the adoption when other factors are not well considered or there is lack of management, but also when there is labor constraint, and most importantly, when the returns are uncertain.
Mhm. Yeah, I think makes a lot of sense. You talked about the transition period. If you want to realize the profit, you said it has to take you 3 to 4 years. And I don't think many or smallholder farmers have that luxury of waiting for that time. You also talked about the risks involved, and one would ask themselves, because you definitely have to have a tough skin to go through all that. You One would ask themselves, beyond finance, how important is farmers' mindset in determining whether conservation agriculture succeeds? Can changing attitudes be just as important as improving access to let's say technology capital?
Now, yes, mindset is very important, but I think I will not treat it as a substitute to practical support. Why? Uh, CA asks farmers to think differently about the field. I'll give an example. In conventional practice, a clean and bare field is often seen as a well-managed field. But CA changes the view by showing that the soil cover, roots, biological activities are part of productivity. Earlier, you mentioned that when you visited Rika, you saw the demo plots and you feel like if a farmer can see and can be convinced. So farmers change their mind when they see evidence. We all do, not because we simply tell them to change. So things like demonstration plots are facts, farmer field schools, peer learning, and visit to successful farmers that are nearby in their district, in their sector, are powerful because they reduce uncertainty to the farmers who are, resistant, or farmers who are willing to adopt. So in a country like Rwanda, where many households have farms that are less than half of a hectare, question is very rational. So mindset matters, but it must be supported by visible results. Extension follow-up, for example, market access, and tools that fit farmers' situation.
True. Um, I have a very funny story. You mentioned about a clean looking farm. There's a misconception in whether having a clean looking farm is
Mm.
good, or having residues as part of the crops grown is beneficial for the farm. When I when I went to Rika,
Hmm.
to me, I think we were given plots to farm in, and each unit, we were 7 units. Each unit could have its own plot to grow maize, soybeans,
Hmm.
watermelon, amaranth, I think. To me, I was a group leader. My unit was led by myself. To me, our farm had to be neat. It didn't have to have any. If we are talking about having residues part of the crops grown, to me it was you couldn't convince me of that. And I think it was Dr. Fritz whom we sat together and he was explaining everything that you have to have residues, you have to
Hmm.
have mulches in your
Hmm.
crops. And I was like, but you're making the farm look unclean and crops have to be taken care of. So when you say the misconception, I was like, she's talking about myself, but she doesn't want to to mention the name.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take you beyond smallholder farming and talk about the current technology, the precision agriculture we are seeing taking over. My question is, how do you see technology, let's say from precision agriculture to digital advisory services, changing the economics of conservation agriculture, let's say over the next 10 years to come?
Okay. Technology. Yes, we are in technology era, so we have to adapt. Technology makes CA more precise and less risky. We are talking about de-risking here. So
Mhm.
we are talking about digital advisory that are provided by extensionists to farmers that help farmers to decide, for example, when to plant, when to apply fertilizer, how to respond to weather forecasts. So we are talking about story testing that reduces brackets fertilizer application. So also things like remote sensing, a mobile platform that help extension workers to identify, for example, drought stress, erosion risk, crop failure, any type of early warning. So the economics part of it improves the reduced no, when this technology is applied in the economic context, I feel like it reduces guesswork. How? Because farmers apply input at the right time and the right quantity, and they reduce waste at the same time improving the returns. So this is aligned with the conservation agriculture because conservation agriculture is about managing the whole farm system more intelligently.
He started with many studies claim he started with thanking you for discussion and um, his three questions are: one, many studies claim conservation agriculture becomes profitable after several years. What evidence exists for smallholder farmers who cannot afford to wait that long? And second question is, which economic indicator do you consider most reliable for evaluating conservation agriculture? Net present value, internal rate of return, benefit cost ratio, or payback period, and why? His third question is, conservation agriculture is often promoted as both an environmental and economic solution. In your experience, what is the strongest empirical evidence that its profitability is driven by improved resource use efficiency rather than external incentives such as subsidies, donor support, or carbon finance? Maybe you can go question by question. First question was about the claim made by many studies about conservation agriculture becoming profitable after several years. and he wants to know the evidence that exists for smallholder farmers who cannot afford to wait that long. I'm not sure if you get the question.
Yes, I do get a question. I think we had a discussion about this. Um, yes, it's really a big issue that, for example, smallholder farmers who own small plots of land and maybe they are practicing agriculture for subsistence and everything depends on this specific land. If you tell them to practice CA and they have to wait for several seasons to observe or to get the return, it becomes an issue. However, I believe that if the practices are managed correctly, it doesn't have to be that long time. Yes, there is a cost that comes with transition periods where you are changing from conventional to CA practices. Obviously, you are changing some behavior, if I can call it. It will obviously affect yield, and eventually the return will be affected. So I think in this period, I believe it's one of my recommendations that maybe the government can provide some incentives to these farmers. Maybe they can subsidize 100% the inputs such as fertilizer and other inputs that are needed to support farmers. They can also be supported to in this specific transition period where they are waiting to get the long-term return, maybe to be or to get engaged in other non-farm activities. So there is need to have intervention by maybe the government or other development actioners. That's what I could say for this. So, which economic tool is best to analyze the economics of CA? He mentioned NPV in terms of rate of return, cost benefit ratio, and payback period. I think each of these is essential depending on what exactly you are looking for. But if you asked me to pick one tool to measure the investment or for investment analysis, I'll go for NPV. Why? Because it indicates the value of dollar for the value of future dollar in today's currency. So it gives you exactly the amount of money you may get if you invest in this specific maybe in CA after a specific period of time, you're going to generate this return and you can get its value in today's currency. So I believe that all of them are good, are essential. But if I have to choose one, I'll go for NPV for the reasons I mentioned.
Mhm.
Can you read the third question?
The third question was conservation agriculture is often promoted as both an environmental and economic solution. In your experience, what is the strongest empirical evidence that is that that its profitability is driven by improved resource use efficiency rather than external incentives such as subsidies, donor support, and carbon finance? He wants to compare between resource use efficiency and maybe the subsidies or incentives by the government and other donor support.
It all starts with the decision one makes. And yes, so the resource use efficiency, it's an individual decision. If it's possible that one would not need to wait for maybe the funding, so the donation from the external support, if I should call it, I think it will require the education and yes, it will require dedication and management following the advices that are provided by the extensionists and other supporting system. So eventually, although we are still having this transition period, but if the management is properly done, I believe that it will lead to better results.
Yeah, I think that's well answered. I think resource use, you definitely have to have an investment, but resource use efficiency can be maybe a result of how your investment was well placed. And if you can go.
Thanks, Robert. So, Robert, my question is actually for you, backed up by Angelique, please. So, you mentioned your experimental plot that you had at Rika and the impact that it would have. So, I was wondering for the rest of us, can you describe what was happening on that plot and why would it typically convince somebody to convert to conservation agriculture? What did you plant and what did you see? What did you measure?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
Robert.
thank you, Johan. This caught me off guard, but that was part of the curriculum. It was in a course called Practical Farming. We had the theory part of conservation agriculture, but we had to bring the theory to life on the farm. So we were given different plots of land. I believe it was um, I couldn't remember the numbers well, but it was a plot which can be grown, in which you can grow maize, watermelon, soybean, and amaranth. So what would happen was we were given all the inputs needed. The school could avail all those inputs: water, seed, fertilizer. Yes, fertilizer, um, um, mulches, all the inputs you can need to run a process from planting to harvesting, but you couldn't end with just harvesting. We also could run numbers and say, because the input cost numbers could be given to us. The professors could come to us and say, we bought this at this amount, seeds at this amount. So we had in mind that whatever we're going to do on the farm, it has to materialize in numbers. So the exam of practical farming was a presentation. A presentation could be done in a way that you could come in front of a jury panel, say we were given this amount of seeds, we used this amount of water, fertilizer, this amount, and we harvested this amount. We well, it wasn't a given that you could have profit always. You could have a loss, but the loss had to be justified. Let's say we had experiences like for armyworm coming to it's a pest called for armyworm. You could present that, say for armyworm landed us into this loss. We also had an experience of monkeys. Monkeys could come. We were the first cohort, so it was a construction area before. So we had all sorts of snakes, monkeys, all sorts of animals were there. So all those could be justified in front of a jury panel and say we had the profit because of this and this, but we also maybe had the loss because of this and that. So yeah, it was a good experience, a great experience. But maybe what's there which we didn't experience is the demo plot. A demo plot of which is run not by first time students, but experienced lectures of conservation agriculture, science of conservation agriculture, where they put all the maybe necessary skills and knowledge into those demo plots, of which if it's, let's say, a cooperative want to come and learn from, Rika is directed to that demo plot, or even students, let's say, who are doing that practical farming, they are directed to those demo plots instead of a lecturer explaining in theory. The demo plots does the explaining. So that's what's happening at Rika.
May I ask, maybe from Angelique, typically, if you look at the demo plots, what would be the positive lessons that you would see from them in terms of conservation, agriculture, profitability?
The demo plots. So first of all, how we are having these demo plots, we have the demo plots where we practice CA. Next to each demo, there's a conventional agriculture. So in one demo, we have mulching. The other demo, we do not have mulching. So all these demos are under rain fed. No irrigation is applied. So every morning we have a container next to each demo. Every morning we are coming to see the runoff, if there was erosion, and so next to the container that is next to the CA plot is always empty. The container that is next to the demo plot is full or almost full. You can see the difference between the two. So even in terms of yield, there's a big difference. I can't remember the figures right now, but there's a difference in yield because you may find the poor germination in the conventional plots as compared to the plot demo plot with CA practices. So I can't have a figures right now, but I can share with Robert later on. I can check the figures in terms of
Yeah.
yield.
We have Dr. Duncan Chiriot in the audience, and he would like to chip in and explain more on the demo plots.
Yeah.
Duncan, if you can come in and
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
good evening.
Yeah, so I'm very glad that we're having this conversation about one of the biggest challenges we have when we try to promote this conservation ag. So Johan was asking about our observations or the specific activities that we do in these demo plots on campus. So maybe I should try by introducing myself. That, of course, my name is Duncan, and I'm also a faculty member. I'm a lecturer in crop production courses here in Wika, and I'm also involved in testing some of the practices of CA. So when Robert mentioned about the demo plots, I wanted to add that we have several demo plots on campus, and we test several CA practices. Some of them are long-term experiments that will take a couple of years so that we can make some conclusion. I'm thinking about one which my colleague, Dr. Angelique, also talked about on testing the different practices of CA as compared to the conventional practices. And this particular experiment, the one we call Demo 4, is we have 4 plots which are planted on a slope of the gradient of 8% gradient. And what we have is 2 plots under conservation ag and 2 plots under conventional. And they are rain fed. So when it rains, we measure the amount of soil that is washed down the slope. And when these soils are washed down the slope, also we lose some soil nutrients, especially when fertilizer is added and it's washed down together with the soil. So some of the stark differences that we can see, first of all, is crop performance, even in a single season. You see the maize in conservation ag plots, they're doing so well, the yield is so high. While the maize in the conventional plots, where soil and fertilizers has been drained, has been washed down, you can tell that by the health of the crop, and also it translates to the yield. And so this is where the economics are coming in. If you have lower yield, definitely you reap lower. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I think stress testing is a bigger part of every science process, and
Yes.
having to compare both conventional farming and conservation agriculture, it definitely, if you want to make an informed decision, then that's the underlying condition you should undergo. Having
Yes.
a demo plot on conventional farming and on conservation agriculture, definitely, if you draw conclusion, I think it doesn't have to be debatable. And maybe what I can say
So
is,
yeah, I
yes,
also saw
please.
some concern, Robert. Sorry, if I may also add, there was also another concern of the benefits, and the benefits of conservation ag. Some are short-term benefits, and some are long-term benefits. And as my colleague said, most of the farmers, they look at the short-term benefits. Yeah, I think it's normal to look at the short-term benefits. So, and Angelique told us about, some of the practices which could come out as the low-hanging fruits for conservation ag. For instance, if you use soil cover through mulching and cover crops, some of the immediate benefits you get is your weed population is going to go down. Even in the same season where you start conservation ag and you cover your soil so that the weeds are smothered, they're killed, this reduces the number of times that farmers need to come and do weeding. And what does that tell us? If normally farmers weed maize 3 or 4 times, if the field is covered enough with a thick mulch and we have the low population density, the low density of weeds, that means the cost of the amount of money you would use to do the weeding reduces significantly. Even if the yield is not, improving, you still reduce some of the cost of production. When you also use cover crops, you also diversify sources of income, especially in scenarios where cover crops are also used as animal feeds, or even some of the cover crops like cowpea. Yes, they're human food. So you see the way people can, diversify the sources of income. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Duncan. I think you put a light on many of the confusions that are, well, if you want to, the confusion is, I want to look at the profitability. I definitely only have to look at the harvest and the income I got from the harvest without considering the labor cost of weeding, maybe the what you need to have a healthy soil for the next season, which is using cover crops. So putting a light on that, I think we only don't have to look at profitability on the side of what the income is from the harvest. Yeah, I mute. There's a question that was asked by Eric Ndaisaba, and he was saying in Rwanda, most farmers does not have the soil cover due to residues are used as the food for animals, but the small farmer need both conservation agriculture and livestock. How can you facilitate them? Do you get the question? I think he's saying farmers do not have soil cover because the residues are fed to animals. So is sustainable agriculture and conservation agriculture the same? And if not, what would you recommend for a geographic region that is consistently affected by climate change and low rainfall?
I would say conservation agriculture is a journey to sustainable agriculture. And for a region, for that specific region, I will, there are different practices. And CA plus, that means other good agricultural practices. So we'll go for good agricultural practices in addition to CA practices. Maybe if I could ask Dr. Duncan to elaborate on this, would be helpful.
Thank you so much. That's a very good question. Conservation ag is one of the practices or technologies that contribute to sustainability in agriculture. So that means it contributes to sustainable agriculture. It aims to make agriculture sustainable. Yes. And some of these practices are context specific. Okay. So there is a need to, develop or implement these practices. And before implementation, there's a need to test them in different farming contexts. Yes. So that's what I can say. Yeah.
Yeah. I think from the look of the questions, there's a need for a deep science on conservation agriculture and sustainable agriculture. This was about the profitability of it, the economic side of it. I think we will definitely invite Dr. Duncan very soon to elaborate more on the science part of all this. We have a hand from Eric.
My question was the competition between the livestock and the soil cover in Rwanda was high value. The small farmer they have the initiative for adopting conservation agriculture, but the soil residue were used as a feed for animal. How can you facilitate them in order to adopt that conservation agriculture? Thank you.
So I would say there are many types, if I could call it that way, types of cover crops, and I'm not so sure if they can all be used as livestock feed. Is that true, Dr. Duncan?
Not entirely true, because some of the cover crops are not edible to animals. Not all of them are edible to animals. But I think the issue that Eric is raising here is that in a bid for when we try to ask farmers to retain the residues in the field, the problem is that they end up having the urge to feed the animals, or even the neighbors come and steal at night and go and feed those residues to the animals. So what needs to be done here? It's very simple. Why not, invest in other initiatives that can provide alternative sources of forages or animal feed so that farmers do not need to come and take these residues. And there is a need for programs that are aimed at integration of forages in the cropping systems. So that as much as we want to produce crops, we also have a room for producing forages alongside. And integration of forages in the cropping systems can be done in different ways through intercropping, the forage trees like Caliandra, Leucaena, Grevillea, which can be actually grown or mixed together with the growing of crops. Some of them are even grown on the borders of the field or of the farms, so that you diversify sources of, you have additional sources of forages that you can feed your animals. Yeah.
True. I hope Eric was answered. We have a question from Trezor. Trezor, if you can go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. So my question, it's on the economic side more than the science side. It's directed towards Angelique. And I'm a Lika graduate, so I can consider myself as a C expert. And even though I left Rika, but CA never left me. So as we know, yeah, conservation agriculture really works excellent for small scale farming, but it fails to translate when it comes to large scale farming. And as we know, in Rwanda, there is a big transition towards commercial farming where small farms are being consolidated into big farms, mainly by doing cooperatives or big agribusiness acquiring small lands, and even the utilization of outgrowers or contract farming. So my main question is, does really the economic variable such as Angelique mentioned about the benefit cost ratio, the NPVs, and the long-term earning of conservation agriculture change with the farm scale? If the farms get big, does that economic variable really change? And I worked. My second question is, I worked on a project. So there is a course, because I'm undergoing my master's degree. There's a course of policy analysis that I did, and I made a project of making conservation agriculture as a policy, where in aggregate all agribusinesses in Rwanda, they have to be a must to produce crops using the conservation agriculture practices as a must, or like as a law that has to be regulated. And when I analyzed that policy, there's a framework that we learned in class called the policy analysis matrix, it majorly bases the impact of a policy on the value addition, on the value that's being added by a system that you want to implement. And after analyzing that policy, I saw that it could decrease the competitiveness of agribusinesses, like commercial agribusinesses. I'm saying large agribusinesses that really operate on a farm of 10 plus hectares, where in order to be successful, the government need to implement the import restriction, the export subsidies, and the price ceilings, because it could raise the prices up, and without the major intervention of the government, such as subsidies and other export subsidies to make the prices go low, the agribusinesses could locally underperform, which could make the crops that are being produced from the outside, those being imported, perform better than the locally produced crops. So my question is, like, in the policy terms, how can we ensure that conservation agriculture remains economically efficient, and economically competitive for the Rwandan agribusinesses, but focusing on large commercial farms, because it's where the future of Africa and even Rwanda is heading. Yeah, thank you very much. Because that's the thing that challenged me throughout my journey, and it challenged my knowledge about conservation agriculture. Maybe I wanted some light regarding it.
Yes, so thanks, Treasure. Very good question. So about the size of, the scale, I feel like it all starts with the management practices that the farmer has adopted, and the management and the efficient use of input that comes with it. So I will give you an example. You see, Trika, we operate at a large scale. So if I give you the figures from the report, economic figures, and our 2024 season A maize production, according to our economic analysis, the revenue was about, we made about 1.9 million per hectare of revenue, and the total cost of production was approximately around 1.07 million. So the gross margin was about 900,000 and some figures. So you could see that it's not about the scale of the farm. It's all about the management. So maybe we can think about the practices that are adopted by a specific farmer, but also depending on the context. I'll give you an example. I wouldn't expect that a farmer located in Eastern Province, given the agroecological condition, would perform the same as the farmer located in Gakenke district or Rulindo district when it comes to seed adoption. They are different agroecological zone, and the soil fertility are different. So we can also look at the initial condition of the soil, because the transition also can be supported by the initial soil condition and the fertility that was there before. So I believe that it all depends on the context, and also see, as Dr. Duncan mentioned, can be context specific and can still be customized and can still be combined with other good agricultural practices for better performance. Cannot be many about scale. It can just be about the management and how you contextualize it, depending on the agroecological condition, but also also the support you get. Not necessarily that you are supported by the government, you have all this subsidy. Even if you are operating individually, you can still make it.
We have there's a question from Elizabeth. I'm not sure if it's directed to me, because we already talked about the principles of conservation agriculture and what should be given a priority. But if it was directed to me, I would say, to me, if I were to choose one, it's very hard to choose one, but I'd say I would consider it a process. Maybe not do all the practice at once. I'd say if I'm starting conservation agriculture tomorrow morning, I'd if I'm considering conservation agriculture as a next endeavor, I'd start with mulching my crops, let's say. Next, I would consider minimum soil disturbance because if you are starting on a bare land, then we definitely have to till the land. So minimum soil disturbance would be the next principle to be considered, and maybe crop diversification to come in later on. Yeah, there was a conversation that went on between Junius from Namibia and Hajim Sanji. Junius was saying he's a bachelor honors in a student in conservation agriculture, and he's doing his 4th year. He was saying the job market is not promising, and Sanji was giving him the hope that Rwanda has designed different policies to give a room to conservation agriculture to grow. But then he said he's from Namibia. But what I want to tell juniors is Rwanda has opened its borders. You can come as an African citizen and you don't have to present your visa. So if you have skills, then you should also be looking at Rwanda as your next job market. We have a comment from Johan Kruger, who said, Trezo, here in South Africa, there's still much room for adoption of CA among large-scale farmers, but those who have converted will never go back. Their input costs have shrinked over time, and the stress levels as well. They enjoy farming again and see a future for their children on their farms. This question extends slightly beyond the economic discussion, but I believe Dr. Duncan's expertise can help address it. Technically, how can conservation agriculture evolve to effectively incorporate crops which are traditionally managed under tillage-based systems while preserving the fundamental principle of minimum soil disturbance? Dr. Duncan, can you come in and answer the question?
Okay, thank you so much, Eli, for your question on maybe compatibility of the CA to some of the crops, which we believe that CA cannot be done. And, you're talking about tillage. Tillage, minimum tillage or no tillage is just one of the practices amongst so many principles and practices of the CA. I think the one we've been discussing so much here is just the 3 of the, minimum or no tillage. There is a soil cover and there's a crop species diversity. While in RICA, we promote additional practices. And I think we have up to 8 of them. So for some of the crops, for example, rice, tillage is a must, the paddy rice. Some of the crops like potatoes, tillage is a must, but there's other CA practices that you can implement here. So we have things like, when it comes to crop species diversification, intercropping and crop rotation. After you're done with this crop, bring in another crop of a different species or a different family. Okay, there is a efficient use of fertilizers, efficient use of irrigation water, integration of cropping and livestock systems. For instance, when you use manure from the crops to go and fertilize your crops in the field. I think, like we say, there are many practices. Some of them cannot be done, and some of them can be done so easily, depending also on the crop. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duncan. We can have Hajim Sanji. I think he has made lots of comments, but we would like to also have him maybe make a short observation. We would also love his introduction if possible.
Yeah, so thank you for organizing this session, Robert. And I think it is quite pertinent to have this kind of discussions because there's a lot of ongoing, initiatives and debate to, support adoption of CA, promotion of CA. So I think if for us as youth, but also engaging with different stakeholders across the decision-making spaces. We're talking about the policymakers. We're talking about the development communities. We are talking about the private sector, the academia. So I think it's the right time to join our effort to support the efforts of the government and the developing communities in, promoting CA adoption. So I think I would like to just highlight a little bit on the scale against the profitability, because this I think is quite important, piece of information to have as far as, we know that the direction of the, not only Rwanda, I would say, I think it's the direction of the African agriculture. We are now trying to move toward a commercially oriented production. And in that context, we are trying to make agriculture, to operate in a scale that is optimal. And to operate in an optimal scale, we know that we need to, depending on the nature of the land distribution and land constraint, the relative, amount of land availability across countries, I think we have different ways to consolidate, to increase the scale of land of production. So in Rwanda, for instance, here, the government is, promoting the operational consolidation, where people consolidate their land in terms of operations, but they retain their ownership. So this one is a quite, I think, a good example of, the strategies where that can be adapted, where land availability is limited in contexts like Rwanda, for instance. So I think we are given the example I have given here about the national irrigation scheme, where farmers have been started with there was an irrigation scheme that was being supported by the Howard Buffett Foundation, the government of Rwanda. So after some time they started, they integrated the adoption of CA into the scheme, where part of the scheme is operating under CA. So people have been doing some research there. Rick has been doing research to, assess the developments, the challenges of the CA adoption and the outcomes. So from the research that has been recently presented by the colleagues here at RICA, it shows that CA adoption outperforms the conventional practices, but also it is for maize production, for instance, maize productivity is way higher compared to the national average, which to me is a good message, because they operate in that model of operational consolidation. So with when the land is operationally consolidated, it means people can be able to share operations. So you don't need to buy, for instance, as a smallholder farmer. We know that it's challenging, and it might not be feasible to buy mechanical, for instance, equipment like a tractor to support farming operations in your scheme. So with operational consolidation, it's easier to buy a one tractor or any other farming equipment and share it across the scheme, because people can hire the services and pay for using the services, but only one person or a company can be providing the services. So it's quite feasible in that context. But also irrigation schemes, we know that irrigating under smallholder farming can be quite challenging and may not be economically feasible. So, but when when the land is operationally consolidated, then it's easier to have a single irrigation scheme to contribute to construct it, or even the government can easily support the irrigation scheme. But also we know that extension service provision is among the an important aspect when it comes to CA adoption. So when farmers are fragmented, it can be also challenging to deliver extension services, especially in the context of the government that has that mandate, but also it's limited in terms of resources that they cannot be able to afford to reach every farmers individually. But when the farmers are consolidated together, they are operating together, they can receive message collectively. So it's easier to organize and provide extensions of services in a manner that is quite sufficient when the farmers are operating together. So I think to me, I agree with the fact that it takes some time to generate for CA to provide any meaningful economic outcomes. But I think when the resources are used quite efficiently, that time may be even reduced. But also when it start getting, bring the outcomes, it can be quite sustainable and, outweigh the conventional ways of doing agriculture. So to me, I would still believe that CA can be quite profitable when farmers, or the government or the stakeholders bring together, farmers in a way that it can be easy to support service provision in a manner that is quite efficient. So, yeah, that is my contribution. And yeah, I think it was interesting to participate in this kind of discussions as they are partnering in our ongoing debates and, policy support to promote CA.
Thank you so much, Haji. I think you mentioned lots of things that spoke to me. You mentioned national irrigation cooperative, which is a vivid example of how conservation agriculture can not only change the life of soil or even the crops you're growing, but the lives of the members of the cooperative or people that actually practicing conservation agriculture. You talked about resource use efficiency. I think it connects back to the question that was asked earlier on how to balance between the government support, donor support, and resource use efficiency. I think these conservation agriculture conversations we're going to make sure that we bring life to them. We have more of them in future. We are definitely going to invite you again and again to discuss this. We believe we can have a domino effect on not only Rwandan farmers but also other African farmers and even academicians who are trying to bring take theory of sustainable farming to practice of it. Yeah, I think we're towards the end of our conversation. We can give a room to Angelique to give us some closing remarks, and then we'll call it a night.
Thanks so much, Robert. And I do appreciate everyone for the contribution, and also give special thanks to my colleagues who chipped in. It was really helpful and informative. So it was an exceptional evening for this conversation we had. I learned a lot from different conversation from different people in the audience. So I'm really glad that we had it today. So to close, I think I have one message, one strongest message that it's just one sentence, is that CA cannot be profitable when the three principles that we mentioned can only be profitable if the three principles are applied together, and when the transitional period is supported, and when the system is adapted to local farmers' realities. So I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough because the questions have been a lot about the profitability of conservation agriculture. The claims are always that this is some government agenda. They want to bring the environmental sustainability side to the life of conservation agriculture. But I think tonight you answered this critical question.